I'm never going to focus on something that makes me feel bad anymore. I'm only going to focus on the thing that I want. And from that point forward, regardless of what people said, and Simon, I've got some hilarious stories of how nobody wanted to hire me or people didn't want me to do a certain thing, or I was always the person that they're like, no, this isn't going to happen. And I would just wear them down. And it started with that focus of, no, I'm just going to focus on what I want, and then we'll figure the rest of it out. And that is one of the biggest components of mindset, is not focusing on those things that you don't want, that you don't like, that do not really empower you, but instead focusing on what it is that you want, on the what, not the how, because the how tends to take care of itself.
What is up, mindset hackers? Thank you so much for joining me here today. I have another amazing guest joining me here today. She is a mindset master. She is also a leading sales expert with over 1 billion with a B in direct revenue. That's kind of crazy because I've been in sales for about 10 years and I think I'm at like 43 million. That is a big number. She's the creator of the Generosity Culture, the host of the Winning Mindset Mastery podcast. She's a speaker and an author. April Shprintz, how are you doing today?
I am awesome, and I am so excited to have a conversation with you today, Simon. I have been waiting for this.
I know, I feel the same. Just a little backstory on that is we had been exchanging some messages on LinkedIn, and also I started following her amazing content, and I was just thinking, this is incredible. Like, we have so much in common. And I was like, I'm going to send her a message and just let her know that. The second that I was about to do that, a message pops in and it's April saying the exact same thing. So I feel like we have so much in common. And we had to put this episode off like about a month. I had her scheduled to be on here, and came down with a pretty brutal illness, and we had to put it off. I had to cancel April 2 times, which was it really broke my heart to do that. But I'm so glad we're finally doing this, and we have some fun stuff to talk about. I'll share that in just a sec. But here's the thing: is when you meet somebody, you meet them at one point in their life, and I see this amazing person that I resonate with so much, that is a master of mindset, that uses it in so many ways to live an extraordinary life, both in a business perspective, but also personally. And my favorite question to ask, and I had to save it for this podcast, is April, I want to hear your backstory. What created you into the amazing person that I know today? I want to hear like how you became this incredible master of mindset and what led up to that, and tell me some of this journey and the bright spots and maybe some of the brutal details. I know that a lot of times we have adversity that shapes us.
Oh, 100%. Well, I think the best ways we're shaped are by adversity. So, growing up, I grew up in poverty. I had a single parent with substance abuse issues. And I think in a lot of ways that molded me, because for a lot of people, you can go one way or the other when you have a childhood that is difficult, and lots of people do. And you really have to make that choice really early on if you're going to see that as, I'm a victim of life and these bad things keep happening to me, or gosh, I'm not surrounded by anybody who's taken charge here. I guess that means I'm the hero of the story. So I need to figure this out, right? And make things better. And the first time I can remember really doing that was finding out from a classmate that I was poor when I was 6 years old. And just having this devastating realization, because he was a very smart kid. And he said it in a really nice way when he first just asked me, like, why are your jeans too short? Why don't you just go buy new jeans? And I said, oh, well, it's spring. We're going to cut these off into shorts. I only get clothes once a year when school starts. And because he was a very analytical, smart kid, he was like, oh, you're poor. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? Like, he's not upset. He's not being mean or teasing. And I was like, I am not poor. And he took me through this series of questions, which to this day, the idea that a 6-year-old had this kind of logical reasoning really impresses me. And just asked me questions like, what does your dad do? What does your mom do? And then the one that really sealed the coffin for me, which was, do you get free lunch? And when he asked me that, it almost made me really reconcile things like the trips that I'd made with my mom to the WIC office, or that people from, our local community in the food pantry like donated food to us. And I was just filled with like this visceral, oh my gosh, I can't be this. This is a terrible thing to be. And really it lit a fire under me. I was like, okay, obviously my mom can't take care of this or it would have been taken care of already, which that's just, a child's mind, the decision that you make. And trying to think of, okay, people who have a lot of money, what do those people do? What do those people look like? And for me, my only reference point was television. And so I thought, okay, George Jefferson moved to the penthouse on the Jeffersons because he had a business. That's what I need. I need to start a business. So I went home, and sales was my first love, Simon. I'm like looking around my house for stuff to sell. And I figure I'm like going to sell it to the neighbors, which my sister says I cannot do. And if I had found anything that I was willing to part with that was also good enough to sell, I would have argued with her, but there really wasn't anything other than this blue marker. So I went out into the front yard and I've got this blue marker and I'm like, what am I going to do? And I just see all this gravel in our front yard. And all of a sudden I was like, if I color those rocks blue, I could sell them because I'll make them magic. I'll put belief in them that you can do whatever you think you can do when you have them. And I'll sell them to people who need to believe they can do things. Because when I was a kid, adults were always telling me, oh, you can't do that. And then I would go and do what they said I couldn't do, good or bad. And so I really believed, okay, I can make these rocks magic and they'll be worth a lot of money and then I'll sell them to people. And I tell that story because that really was one of those moments that shaped my entire life. That look, life hands you something you don't want to have to be in that situation, then you figure it out and you find a solution. Now, that business did really well the first day at school, but it got shut down at lunch because all the kids in my class charged their lunch because they bought rocks and then they didn't have lunch money anymore.
I love that. And something just clicked with me because you have a book named
Magic Blue Rocks.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Again, more commonalities. There's times where I've created those businesses that somehow evaporated within a week or a day. So love hearing that. Now continue on after that. How did the story unfold after that? And how did you start getting into mindset?
Well, so this actually was the beginning of mindset, believe it or not, because the teacher, God bless her, called my mom and had her come to school, which was a huge no-no, right? Like my mother had said many a times, you better be bleeding. If the school calls me, like it better be dire. And my mom came and she heard what happened. And I now as an adult cannot imagine what that conversation must have been like and how sad and heartbroken and disappointed in our life or herself she must have been, just thinking of it as a parent, how hard that would be to be like, your kid was so humiliated, she was poor, she started selling rocks at school and like breaking all the rules. But she sat down and talked to me, and I feel like she did a really good job saying, money is something that you have, it's not who you are. But when she was saying it, she started to cry. And my mom was this really tough woman. She didn't cry very often. So the fact that she was crying again gave me this visceral reaction. But then she was like, you can be different. You can have anything you want to. You can go and get that. And when she said that, her whole demeanor changed. And in that moment, I remember thinking, okay, when she's talking about the thing that's scary, like the toughest person I know cries. But when she's thinking about something that feels good, like she looks like a superhero, I'm never going to focus on something that makes me feel bad anymore. I'm only going to focus on the thing that I want. And from that point forward, regardless of what people said, and Simon, I've got some hilarious stories of how nobody wanted to hire me or people didn't want me to do a certain thing, or I was always the person that they're like, no, this isn't going to happen. And I would just wear them down. And it started with that focus of, no, I'm just going to focus on what I want, and then we'll figure the rest of it out. And that is one of the biggest components of mindset, is not focusing on those things. that you don't want, that you don't like, that do not really empower you, but instead focusing on what it is that you want, on the what, not the how, because the how tends to take care of itself.
That is so powerful. You know, before we started recording, we were kind of talking about a topic to discuss here, and you mentioned that people have somewhat of a financial ceiling. I call it a financial thermostat, but we also talked about how some of the stuff gets programmed in us when we're young, and like the realization that you were poor and not even understanding that, and then wanting to break free of that, is right in line with what we should dive into today, because I know this is a big issue for a lot of people. And even when we were talking earlier, it's I question this too, because I know that I've had those times in my life where I've had a ceiling on my income, and it seemed like I would just bump up against it, and finally I would break free, and then something would reset it back down to that level, or maybe it
Mhm.
would fall, and then I would kick it back up. But I think that's something that we struggle with in a lot of ways. And I know that you help some of your clients with this, but let's talk a little bit more about that, because I think that this can relate to anybody, whether you're making six figures or even seven figures. What is it that is behind this? Let's talk about that. I want to hear some details about like how you talk to your clients about this, how you help them break free, and maybe give a few steps on what that looks like, and what we need to do to break through to new levels when it comes to our income.
Yeah, 100%. So everybody in some way, shape, or form deals with how they are seeing or experiencing money. And I call it a money cap. There's lots of different ways to talk about it. But basically, it is this idea that there is a certain level I can reach, and then I can't go past that. That's not for me, that's for other people. And we talked about how early it happens. Most of all of our beliefs about finances and money and what we're capable of are completely instilled in us by the age of 6. And it's not something that we're super aware of. It's based on what we hear, what people express, whether they have an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset, and what our environment is. And in a lot of ways, you hear people talk about this when they say, rich people have rich kids and poor people stay poor. And a lot of that is the mindset that they are given from such a young age. And if they don't question it and work to change it, you find generations and generations experiencing the same things. And what's interesting is if you get a group of people and you say, what's the most amount of money you think you'll ever make? You'll get such different answers. Some people say, I'm never going to make six figures. Someone's going to say a few million. Someone might say, I'm going to be a billionaire. Why do they all say different things? Because those are their belief systems. This is what I am capable of. This is what is possible for me. And I find that when folks hit a money cap, and you talked about it, like you'll get to a certain level, but if you pass it, then something happens, right? And it can be like you have repairs on your house and it takes your amount of money that you have in your savings and whatnot to a certain amount. And you find that you're just at this place over and over again. And I experienced that myself, where I was like, how am I going to break seven figures? That was a big deal to me. And really feeling deeply that if you can make $100,000, you can make $1 million, because I didn't think it was that much harder to make $100,000 than it had been to make $10,000. So what is really keeping me from this? And doing research on those limiting beliefs. Now, there are several different limiting beliefs, but the three that I find folks find the most often are they either think on some level, and remember, this is your unconscious mind. This isn't how you're thinking. So some people will say, oh, that's not me. Look at your behaviors, not so much what you're thinking when you are consciously thinking about it, right? So one is, I'm not worthy of that. I have not earned it. That's not for me, for a multitude of reasons. It could be, deep down that your self-esteem was always based on outside accomplishments, and you don't feel like you've accomplished enough to have that much money. Or you could have grown up in an environment where your parents made a ton of money, but they worked really hard and they were miserable. And since you don't work hard enough to be miserable, you don't think that you deserve that amount of money, right? So that's the one. The other is this feeling that they might be being disloyal to their family or their friends or all the people that they know if they earn a certain amount of money. This can be tied into religion, right? Because a lot of times people find that it is great to be someone who doesn't have a lot, who, gives to everyone else and just sees money as evil. Whereas money is just an amplifier. If you're a great person, you're going to be an even greater person because you're going to be able to help more people and do more things. If you're a terrible person, sure, you're going to seem much more terrible because you have access to other things, power, and making things happen. Now, the third one, and this is the one that in my heart of hearts just like kills me, and it's one that I work on quite a bit, is they just think it's not possible. That's not for me. And the truth of it is, there is not a single thing that has ever occurred to you that you want to do that is not possible for you. And when people say, oh, I don't know if I believe that, think about all the things that you never wanted to do. And the example I always use for myself is I never wanted to be an astronaut. Now, I was in the Air Force, I've actually flown planes, I've done all these things. I never wanted to be an astronaut. If you dig a little deeper, I'm only decent at math and science. So it goes along the lines of anything you really want to do, you have that deep desire, you will find that with work and effort, you can get there and you can make those things happen. So as far as the steps to get over these, the first one is really to just realize that you have that money cap. What is it? This number, because you will find yourself, just like you said, hitting this number over and over again. And then what limiting belief is that tied to? And really, a lot of times this takes conversations with a coach, a mentor, someone who knows you and cares about you, who can help you understand. A limiting belief that I had that wasn't in those top three, I thought I would be lonely if I was wealthy. I thought I would lose people. And that's a little bit of that family and you not being loyal to people if you go somewhere that they didn't go. But I thought it more about acquaintances and friends. And then the third thing that you do to break through is by recognizing these limiting beliefs that you have, you can really start to deconstruct them because they're very similar to the monster in the closet when you're a kid. And as soon as someone comes in and shines a light on that monster, there isn't anything there. It doesn't survive the light of day. Same thing with these beliefs. Really just recognizing them and understanding that they're there allows you to push through them and challenge yourself and get past that. That's one of the things that I do in my business accelerator within that time period of the accelerator is push people to do that while they're in there, which is why they're able to earn back their investment. Because I think that that is a skill that no matter what else they get out of it, pushing past that money cap makes it worth the time and the money that they invested.
Oh, I love everything that you said, and I can relate to that because one time where I got the flashlight shown on me, I wouldn't be surprised if this was similar to you, but I remember like I was first looking into putting some serious money into investing into coaching, and the mentor that I had, he asked me this question that triggered everything, that triggered this whole path that I'm on. And he was like, so tell me why is it that you're not making $1 million a year? And I was just like, what? And I remember saying to him, like, well, I don't need $1 million a year. Like I make plenty of money and I've got a great work-life balance and, everything's perfect. And he said to me, he's like, oh, so you're fat and happy. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He goes,
Wow.
well, you're good enough. You're telling me that it's just like good enough where you're at. Right. And it was so interesting because I was like, wow, that's the limit of my limiting or the ceiling of my limiting beliefs. I felt like I was doing so well, but also I realized that, my ceiling was just different than most people. And,
Mhm.
like that was maybe like $250,000 at that time. And I was like, he's so right. And I realized at that moment that it's not about the money. It's about the limiting belief. I was like, yes, I could be fine with that amount, but like you said, you can do so much more. Like you can help people on a much bigger level, but also like I wanted to be like I wanted to have the type of characteristics of somebody who thought a lot bigger. And it's taken me years like that was total subconscious wiring. Cause I always like at that point, I felt like I'm really confident and I go after it. But the subconscious is so powerful when we don't even know it. And it was whispering in my ear, Simon, you have enough. You're doing great. You don't need anything else. And maybe on some level that's true, but I think it was like a disguised limiting belief right there. And I just realized that, we all have them. It's just like we're at different levels, right?
Oh, 100%. And the thing is that the limiting beliefs that people have around money tend to be the ones that they notice. And they don't understand that if you have that limiting belief around money, it's impacting you in other places. You're playing small in other areas because we don't just play small in one area. We play small or play it safe because it can look different for other people, right? Everywhere. And if you challenge yourself in one area, and that's what's so beautiful about it, then you can't help but challenge yourself in other areas too. So it really expands your life and your life gets bigger in so many ways. And people might say, oh, I don't want a big life. When I'm saying bigger, I'm not saying, necessarily jets and Ferraris and a whole team. I'm saying bigger in the enjoyment, in the way that you live in the moment. You're not worried about how you're going to take care of certain things, the way that you go after your health, your time with your family. Everything becomes just an exponential version of what you have, almost like they cracked a shell open.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I used to think of money as like this thing that we needed to go out there and go into the external world and get it. It's not even a real thing. It's like a total idea. And what I've come to realize is, this is kind of my definition of money is that it's a symbol and not the only symbol, but one symbol of the value that we can give to the world. And like where I really started breaking through some of those barriers was when I started to understand that it's not like I'm not separate from money. Like money is just, it's an extension of me. And the more I give, and we got to dig into this too because I know you feel the same, but like the more we give, the more value we provide. Money, that symbol is an extra, it's a byproduct. And so I'm always focusing and I'm always thinking like, how can I add more value? How can I learn more? How can I master the stuff that I'm working on so that I can help other people in a bigger way? And that brings me to the next question I have, to you, is about the generosity culture. I know you are a big fan of giving more, adding value. I want to hear more about what the generosity culture is. I've seen you speak about it, but I want to hear you tell this audience about it and how that evolved and some of the principles behind it.
Yeah, 100%. So the generosity culture really is the result of an incredible woman and mentor who I met when I was very young. And she actually just passed away in February of this year. She stayed a good friend of mine. She lived up into 90 years old. But when I was 9 years old, she was the head of human resources for the factory that my mother worked for. And she came to our home because my mother needed to go to rehab and the factory was going to pay for it rather than her losing her job. And this very busy, very amazing, very important woman decided to come to our home to tell a 9-year-old little girl that her mom was going to rehab. And that wasn't in the rule book. That wasn't something they were supposed to do, but she felt like it was the right thing to do. And in that point, that day when I met her, this day that could have been absolutely terrible, because imagine you're a 9-year-old kid, your one parent is going to be gone for 30 days. Oh, by the way, she's crying. The house is a mess. Like it's a pretty bad day. And then the most beautiful, regal, important looking person you've ever seen. I literally remember Simon walking into the house and going, someone who looks like that does not come to your house for a good reason. This is not good. Because she just looked so important. And she basically said, your mom's doing this very brave thing. And it may be scary now, but your life is about to get better. And then she went on to say, I think you are special and I would like to be your friend. And in that moment, she was the only person I'd ever seen besides a teacher in my life who was what I would want to be. And so it had this tremendous impact on me. And she didn't just say that, she became a friend and mentor. She came to school programs, she sent me letters. She ended up being the very first person who helped me get a corporate job when I was 16 by giving me 2 weeks that I could work in that same company in the office side. She gave me 2 weeks and said, "You can earn a place here if you give enough value. So go give value while you're filling in on people's vacations, and I bet you can make a job for yourself." And she really embodied and modeled everything about the generosity culture without it having a name. And from her, I learned that every question that we have that we can solve in our life and in business can be solved by asking the question, how can I help? So in my corporate career, in the military, and then when I started my company, I began to model growing business around that idea. And it was basically, we'll pour into the people, we'll pour into the clients, and we'll pour into the community. And when we do that with our time, not with money, when I say the generosity culture, sometimes people grab their wallets. It's not about money. It's something far more important. It's your time and attention. By focusing on those three things, I have been able to turn around clients that were multi-million dollar deals that were ready to walk away from a company and doing an exit based on their contract in 2 weeks and get them to stay and get them to happily stay. I have been able to turn around companies that were losing hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and get them profitable in less than 6 months, only focusing on pouring in on to the people and the clients and then the community, because it's all such a symbiotic relationship. And Simon, I know you get this because you're such a value driven person. And it sounds so counterintuitive, like, oh, you're going to do these fluffy things and we're going to make money. Yeah, we're going to do those fluffy things and you're going to make more money than anyone else faster and longer. It is both the short game and the long game.
Oh my gosh, I've got goosebumps right now because, like the kind of the theme that I've been thinking about lately, the last couple of months is like, I've made a lot of money, both in sales and in coaching and investments and stuff. But kind of what I've been more my head is at right now is like, I just had a conversation today with Martha, who's been one of my leaders in my coaching community. And I told her, like, I'm just going to like let go of a lot of the stuff that I've been making money on and just try and give more, like just like completely unchain myself and just see what happens. And this resonates with me so much because it's just like how I got to this point is I remember, it was 2019. I was getting really obsessed with money and finance and more of the strategy around it. And I kept reading some of the most wealthy people, like the Warren Buffetts and just trying to figure out what their secrets were. And I noticed that so many of them kept saying, like part of this is to give. And I remember like, I've always been somebody who's given, but, maybe not nearly on the level that I do now. And I was just like, well, what happens? And I just started like making it a practice to give more than I'm comfortable with and then
Mhm.
see what happens. Like clockwork, like it just started to really flow after that. I think it's like a necessary, like energetic component of all of this is just like giving. You allow your hands to receive more by letting go of the things that you're clutching onto, right?
100%. And I love what you said about money being energy because I really think of it that way, right? I think of it as a tool and I think of it as energy. I give this energy to you because you're going to give me your time. You give this energy to me because I'm going to give you something of value. And the thing is energy likes to stay in motion. So when people want to grip onto it and they want to pile it up somewhere and they're not using it for things and doing things with it and they're worried about what happens, it's stifled. And sometimes when people are that way about it, I'm like, I need you to imagine this money as a puppy. All of your money is a puppy. Here's what puppies want. They want attention. They want to be played with. They want to have fun with. They want to be able to run around over here and then come back here. They want you to let them go be with this person because that's what's going to be fun. That's the giving part. But the puppy's always coming back to you. And the puppy keeps getting bigger. So you don't have to be worried about where's it going to come from. And if I give this, how will it come back? And that's not just in giving to others, that's in if I invest this money. People can be so quick to say, oh gosh, I don't have the money for that. but they have money for things that aren't going to necessarily return things to them. Right. So if you give it to others, if it's charity or something you believe in, what that gives you is this amazing feeling, this I'm helping, I'm part of this bigger symbiotic relationship. If you're giving it in an investment, then you're getting learning back. And there's so much that when you're, to your point, not gripping it so tightly, that can happen. And there's lots of other ways that we see it in our lives. And not to use a quote unquote farming analogy, but no squeezed chicks grow. You gotta let them run around and do things. And I think sometimes that's how people treat their money, right? They like a little kid that's holding its first chick and doesn't want to let it go and just mushes it. And then they don't have what they want anymore.
Yeah, and it's kind of like when you clutch onto things, it's like there's the energetic frequency of I'm worried it's going to go away and I'm
Hmm.
worried I don't have enough. Whereas like I found like one of the coolest things about giving one is it feels freaking amazing.
Mhm.
And it's also like a really good way of connection. Like like I've never felt so connected to a human being when I've been out there and just found like a homeless person and just like gave him some money, gave him a hug, and told him, I see you, and you could be me, I could be you. Like we probably are in another dimension or universe. And like
Right?
that feeling, I've never felt so much love and so much connection. I got to move on before I start crying about that one. But wow, that is like powerful shit. But I also think like like when you give, you're basically saying to your subconscious, like, I never have to worry about running out because I'm unlimited. Like I'm a
Yes.
limitless source.
Yes, and there's something to that, that whether you believe in the law of attraction and how what you put out comes back to you and your belief system is what you experience, or you just believe in the plain old neuroscience of it, when you give, you are unconsciously saying, I have plenty. And then your unconscious mind, which is your unpaid assistant, is showing you all the ways you have plenty. So those opportunities that you were talking about earlier, like how the money just kept flowing in, whether you're looking at it from a law of attraction perspective, which I absolutely believe in, or you just like the science, which I
Mm-hmm.
think they work together, that's how it all starts coming to you. And that's why it feels like someone just got really lucky. And wow, like that just out of nowhere, that started happening. And it's not just with money, it's anything that someone wants, whether it's health or it is, relationships, friendships, doesn't matter. It all functions the same way.
Did you ever have any like skepticism or reservations about things like the law of attraction or some of the, I guess like we're maybe I'm in a bubble, but I have a hard time even saying woo woo because it feels like science and what we used to call woo woo is starting to like come together. And to me, it's just like this is how it is. I don't question like crazy shit that happens to me anymore. I'm just like, well, that's how it works, but like there
100%.
was a point where I was like, I don't know about some of this stuff, but I always like, and I encourage people in the audience to do this because like, I've always been more of an analytical thinker, but open-minded. So I was
Mhm.
open to possibilities, but there's things that I have, in the past, like the law of attraction, where I'm just like, I don't know about that,
Right?
but I'll give it a try. I'll be open to it. And then I've been proven like just that openness is just like what I've observed is like this stuff is like I believe in the law of attraction, a million times over. But for you, has it always been like that? Have you always been open to some of the more spiritual sides of like mindset and personal development, or have you been like me, where it's like I'm not so sure, and like then something kind of changed that?
So for me, it was interesting. I wasn't in the circles that talked about it for so many years. So up until probably my early to mid 30s, I was very interested in neuroscience. I studied it. I got, certified in NLP and hypnosis. I thought that I was doing these things with my subconscious or my unconscious mind, right? That's where I thought it was coming from. The moment I first got exposed to the law of attraction, I was like, okay, that's why it's so powerful. This makes so much more sense because some of the things I was able to do, because whether you're looking at it from a scientific perspective or the law of attraction, you're still doing the same things. You're still believing in the same way. So it doesn't matter. It's like gravity. You don't have to believe in it for it to hold you to the ground. which is a
Mm.
great thing. So when I first started really hearing about it, it made absolute sense to me. What I didn't understand was, how do I do it on purpose? I don't feel like I'm doing it on purpose, and I want to get better at it, because the thing that people don't talk about a lot with the law of attraction, which I think is a misnomer, is, brother, it works both ways. So for
Hmm.
anyone
Right.
who says the law of attraction doesn't work, nothing but bad stuff happens to me. That's right. You're
You're
using
attracting
it
it.
very well in the wrong direction. If you want it in another direction, I can help you do that. But you've already proven you're great at it. Let's just turn it around.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting because I don't know about you, but I remember in science and stuff in school, they used to talk about like the five senses: sight, smell, touch, hearing, taste. Like,
Mhm.
we never talked about feeling, like
Right.
that's the frequency that, like, you walk into a room, like you and I, energetic frequency matches. That's why we are on this call right now. Like
Mhm.
that, like, it's like, I look at this, I'm just like, of course this was supposed to happen because we're an
Right.
energetic frequency match. And
Mhm.
like, if you live in a low vibe state, you're going to be attracting like crap in your, like, victims mentality, like situations where that allow you to blame everybody else but yourself. So you're right. I love that it goes both ways. This is such a beautiful conversation. I want to skip back to something though, and then I want to hear what you're up to in the big picture, because as if you're not playing big enough right now. I know you're probably up to some really cool stuff, but um I want you to slay some of these limiting beliefs. Like,
Okay.
just be brutally, like, pretend I'm just like somebody that's just like, comes up with a limiting belief and just says it to you around money, and
Yeah.
just tell me like tell it, like, just be brutally honest of why it's bullshit. Okay, so the
Okay.
first one, um rich people are greedy.
No, rich people aren't greedy. You're looking at it like a victim, and you think they're greedy because they have a lot and you don't, but they've stepped up to get what they want. They're not expecting someone else to give it to them.
Okay, here's another one for you. um I'm not worthy of making seven figures.
Do you want to make seven figures?
I don't know if I do,
Okay, why wouldn't you want to?
because I don't need that much,
Why do you not need that much?
because I'm comfortable where I'm at.
Are you comfortable, or are you just kind of lazy sitting in it? Like, you're comfortable because you think it would be uncomfortable to have more than the people around you.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay, one more for you. Um, I want to make more money, but I'm afraid that my friends will judge me.
Well, so the first thing I would tell you is that if your friends are going to judge you for making more money, they're not actually your friends, and that's a gift. And a lot of people are afraid to make more money because, and I was, because you think you'll lose people. And I'll be 100% candid with you. There are people who will shake out because you're reaching and being better will make them uncomfortable, not because they judge you, because they're afraid you're judging them. And you're not, you're going after what will make you happiest. But what I will tell you is, as you really get bigger in your life and you become higher vibration and you have more of the things that were meant for you, the people who were meant for you will also gravitate into your life. So while you may be sad to say goodbye to some of the folks that won't be in your life anymore, you will look back on it in time and be grateful that it happened because of the space it opened up for the people who are there now.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for playing that game with me. I had never done that with any of my guests, but I thought, like, this, you're so good at just like off the cuff, like role playing and stuff. So I thought that would be kind of fun. That was the
It
first
was
time
a
ever.
good time. I liked it. I was like, oh, I don't want to be too mean. These people don't know.
I love it though, because it's the straight up truth, and we carry that baggage around with us, and sometimes we need, a little, like, I'm so glad I got the flashlight shown on me, and it was like a gift, right? To realize, the second one that I asked you was one that I carried with me for a long time, and I'm sure I do still to some extent, and it's interesting too, because the greed one, like, I know so many, this is how powerful the subconscious is I know so many people that are so giving, that are wealthy, And I know that rich people are greedy is a total false belief, but I've
Mhm.
caught myself before, like, like when I talk about giving or charity or something like that, or making a lot of money, I'll be like, oh, but you can do a lot of good with this, as if like I need to justify that, as if it's a bad thing to want money.
Oh, 100%. Well, and it's interesting because I have people who talk to me even today who are like, but we have got to help poor people and we have to give them everything and we have to do this for them. And I'm like, look, I'm just going to step up as poor people. I am former poor people. And I'm going to tell you that no amount of money, no handout, no anything gave me as much as someone inspiring me that I could have what you have. So, no, it's not that we need to give them money and more people should have money. Sure, let's help in any way we can. But what we really elevate everyone by doing is giving them the inspiration and the belief that they too can expand who they are, what they have, what their life is. It's the inspiration, not the money, that makes the difference. People who are wealthy have more mind space to get inspired because they're not worried about whether or not they're making rent.
Right. It's interesting because I think most of us, as at least when we get older, like we realize that money doesn't buy happiness, but being poor doesn't either, right? They're kind of
No.
two separate things. And having that space to be able to do what you want and not have to worry about that, that's huge. Oh, I just love this conversation. Okay, April, I want to hear what is big in your what's coming up. I want to hear if you have any programs coming up. I also want to hear if you have any big projects, and I also want to hear like how my audience can connect with you.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so I do have big projects because I am constantly pushing myself. Like I'm always saying, how are you not playing big enough? Because that is the fun part. So I am in the process of starting a few new groups. One I've already done, which is your business accelerator, which is an 8-week program that really helps people take their business to the next level, whether they are, really trying to get to 6 figures, to 7 figures, to 8 figures. It works very well for those folks. But what I really love is that the way that I played small, as weird as it might sound, Simon, is I did a lot of work with big companies. Those were big paychecks and I could make a difference. But at the end of the day, it wasn't life-changing difference. For me, when I work with entrepreneurs and businesses that are at those levels that I just spoke of, that's life changing. When we accelerate that, that is not a rounding error. So for me, it was tough to step into because I was afraid, like, oh gosh, can I do this? Can I get a whole group of people to make these changes? And through doing the first accelerator and people double and tripling their investment in 8 weeks, like that was amazing and a lot of fun. The next thing that I'm going to be doing is starting a much bigger group that is what I'm going to call Catalyst. And it's just giving people ways to up their game in their life where it's not the same time commitment. It's a very, very small investment, but to get people around other people who want to expand, who want their life to get bigger in different ways, whether it's fitness or business or abundance, family, what have you. You can get in touch with me either on my website, drivenoutcomes.com. I am very active on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I'm the only April Shprintz. If you can figure out how to spell that last name, that's me.
Well, I'm going to be plastering your links all over my social media properties, and I am excited for this. Mindset hackers. So I hope you got value out of it. I don't even want to say that because I know you did. I got a ton of value out of this conversation. I'm so grateful that we finally made this happen. Here's what I would love for you to do. This is your call to action. Make sure that you connect with April. Send her a note on social media. Let her know that you heard her on my podcast. And then make sure to check out her programs and share this with somebody who could use this message. I know that this resonates with some of you, and there's probably somebody out there that you know that might be a little bit locked up in their financial ceiling. And the best thing that you can do for them is to maybe just gently share this episode with them so that they can start planting some of those ideas inside of their head and unwiring that subconscious that holds us all back. And then the other thing I'd love for you to do, please drop a rating on this podcast if you're on Spotify or if you're on Apple, drop a rating on this podcast. It only takes a second. And then I am now booting up my YouTube channel. So I had this thing going a couple of years ago, but lately I've started to upload some of these podcast episodes to YouTube. I'm going to be at it, like I told April. I'm going crazy this year. I'm just going to drop as much value as I can. I'm going to be an open book and share as much as I possibly can. I want to be part of this generosity culture because I know that we all win. April, any last words?
No, I absolutely love it. I wrote down both. I'm going to rate the podcast, and I'm definitely subscribing to the YouTube channel because I need more of this.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mindset Hackers. I will catch you on the next episode.